All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Raw Intuition Health Show. So happy to have you with us this week. The last show of 2023, you guys. So thank you for hanging out with me every Sunday with the incredible guests that I bring on. And this week is no exception. We have an amazing guest. It's my friend, Dr. Stephanie Peacock. She is a doctor of chiropractic and a functional health consultant who specializes in stubborn gut issues and mast cell activation syndrome by taking a root cause approach. Dr. Stephanie combines her 10-year personal history with overcoming chronic gut issues with her clinical training and experience to help patients heal their gut and get their health back. So in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about environmental toxins and different chemicals and things that we should be aware of in our health journey and our aspirations to create the best health possible. And so there's different chemicals and different toxins that most of us are exposed to on a pretty regular basis that not everybody is aware of. And so just to create some awareness, we're going to be talking about some of these things. And there's no better person to do that than Dr. Stephanie. So let's bring her in here. What's up, Dr. Stephanie? So glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me. I didn't realize this was the last show. I didn't, this year is going by so fast. I didn't realize
Yeah.
this would probably be because week is Christmas. So that makes, and then New Year's. So
Yep.
wow, I'm honored to be like your final guest on your 2023 season.
Well,
So thanks for having me.
yeah, I'm honored. I'm honored. I love everything that you put out and everything that you do, and it's just incredible. So I'm more than honored to be having
Aw,
you for our last show of the year.
thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to talk about like what we're going to chat about today. Like, that this is like one of my favorite topics. And, I wish it didn't have to be a topic. I wish there weren't all these different chemicals we're exposed to on a daily basis. But, it's just, honestly, it's just so incredible that this is an issue that we have to deal with. And so bringing
Wow.
awareness to it is one of my favorite things because I truly believe that once we get rid of that, whatever is creating that barrier in our body to heal, and a lot of it tends to be what we're exposed to on a daily basis. Once you get rid of it, the body will naturally be able to detox it out and be able to heal from it. So heal from the effects of it. So I'm excited. We're going to touch on a few different ones. I know I'm going to bring a few to the table and you will too. And it'll be fun to kind of chat about each of them and bring a little bit more awareness to the subject.
For sure, yeah. I know, and I love that you talk about. I was looking through your website and I saw that you didn't realize early on, in your life that like the detoxification pathways can get, kind of clogged up, and we don't, you know, have the proper elimination going on to help with healing. So, could you maybe just before we get started, could you just talk a little bit about, your health journey and just kind of how you, got into this lifestyle and kind of what it's done for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I grew up not the healthiest person. I mean, I think we all kind of do, like
Yeah.
I grew up in the 90s and it was like fast food and,
Yeah.
and all these things. And so,
Yeah.
and I was an athlete. And so, always hungry and just the quickest thing I could get my hands on is what I was the mantra back then and probably still is now. I don't know, but it was, just calories in, calories out. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as you're getting the calories in. So I was always eating like all the craziest processed foods. And I was, stressing my body out simultaneously with all the exercise and, the training I was doing as a swimmer. And then using products like I always bring this one up. Herbal Essence was my go-to favorite product for hair mousse. And that is just loaded with, with chemicals.
I use
And,
that one too.
yeah, and I just wasn't aware, had no idea because everyone else around you's doing, no one, especially when you're younger, who knows, what's going on. And so
Yeah.
just over the years, I noticed my health started to kind of just deteriorate slowly. Like my gut started to feel like I would get bloated, and then I just would start to feel really tired. And then, I remember when I decided to switch over to a whole food plant-based diet, I even felt actually worse from the amount of fiber I was consuming, but I was like, I should be
Mm.
feeling better. why don't I feel good doing these things that I know are better for me? And so just over time, I just started to just certain symptoms just started to keep popping up, like brain fog and headaches and things I just couldn't explain because lab work always showed up super normal. And so then I ended up getting sick with mononucleosis, and that's a condition that's affected by a virus called Epstein-Barr virus. And the most common symptom of it is chronic fatigue. And so I went through a period of about a month where I was just completely out for the count. Like I was exhausted and that was actually the moment it caused me to slow down, because I was always in like from being an athlete and, just always wanting to like be the best I could be. I was always in that sympathetic dominant state. So it caused me to really slow down. And I was like, what in my life needs to change that I'm not doing right now? Like, what am I doing wrong that's causing me to just make myself sick constantly? So I looked at my life and I realized, that's when I really started to dive into environmental chemicals, basically. And I just started researching things that could be related to chronic fatigue and causing, you to feel sick without having any answers. And that's when I realized that there's over 84,000 chemicals registered with the Environmental Protective Agency, and less than 1% have been tested for human safety. And I realized, I took a look at all the products I was using, the things I was cooking with, the water I was drinking. I wasn't even filtering my water. And I was like, wow, I have got to make a change. So that's really what started my journey towards understanding what is in our environment that contributes to us being chronically ill. And and that includes food. That includes what are foods being sprayed with pesticides, and what if you eat animal products, what they're being fed and what they're being injected with, and what that's getting absorbed into your system. And then what are we drinking? Where are we drinking our water from? Are we filtering it? There's over 280 contaminants found in our water supply. And what are we using on our everyday skin that gets absorbed and processed through our liver, and then can create this situation where you mentioned earlier, where our detox pathways, we have 6 different major ones in our body that work together simultaneously to eliminate chemicals and toxins from our system that can slowly start to clog these different pathways up, and then resulting in recirculation of chemicals in your body, causing symptoms. So it was all these things that I was like, wow, this is just like, how is this not being talked about? So that's really what drew me to understanding what's in our environment, how important lifestyle choices and factors are. But just what are we surrounding ourselves with? And once I started to implement these changes and supporting my detox pathways, getting rid of things that were causing these pathways to not be as efficient as they could be, that's when I noticed real healing in my body start to really take change. And it's not an overnight thing you notice. I wish it was, but it takes time for your body to start to unwind. Like I always like to think of like an onion, like you're peeling back the layers of what it was that you were exposing yourself to for so long. And then it takes time to peel it back. So, but it happens, and the body has a blueprint to heal, and always gets to that point once you get rid of what's causing the issue. So that's pretty much my journey in a nutshell. Was I got years and years of just symptoms I couldn't explain. And then finally I got really sick, and really caused me to question what it was what was in my environment that could be leading to that.
Wow, yeah, that's so cool, and I mean, what a great introduction just into this topic. So much great information, um, and yeah, it's so amazing when I think about growing up, all the chemicals that I was putting onto my body and taking into my body, just on an everyday basis. I was deodorants and body sprays and colognes and
Oh, clones. Wow.
soda and processed foods and just pizza, all these different things that it was just like it's amazing the resiliency that the body has to be able to put up with that sort of abuse, and somehow get us to keep going. But
I know.
yeah, when I started to learn about detoxification and just health, true health, it's amazing the difference, that you feel when you take out a lot of these different pollutants and toxins and start hydrating and,
Oh,
putting
yeah.
fiber and all these vitamins and antioxidants into the body. So
Mhm.
yeah, just it's incredible that more people don't talk about this side of it, the, toxins and things like that, because it's, it affects our hormones, and hormones run the body, right? And so if we're kind of messing with that balance of hormones, it's going to be really difficult to feel your best and to have the best, long-term health. So yeah, so glad to have you here, and thanks for sharing that. And just for, I didn't mention this earlier. What's up, Tessa? What's up, Annie? Carl's here. Music Monster Man is here. What's up, guys? Thanks for being here. And Carl said, "How do you find so many incredible guests? Such a great show." I know.
Mhm.
I know. I'm telling you.
Oh,
I've been lucky. I've been lucky to find these amazing people. So, um,
mhm.
so in the Q&A session, you guys, we always give away a free gift. I'm going to be giving away an ebook copy of 5-Star Digestion again, just because that's kind of goes along with the topic. And so we're talking about, improving the gut and just improving overall health. And then Dr. Stephanie also was generous enough to give her free ebook, or give away her ebook, called Everyday Chemicals That Make Us Gain Weight. All right, so I know weight gain is an issue that a lot of people are struggling with. And so the chemicals, people don't think about the chemicals. They just think about, food and exercise, but they don't look at the chemicals that they're exposed to. And again, the hormones are affected. And so that makes it difficult if you're trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
And as a special, since it's the last episode of the year, I'm going to be giving away to the two winners a cinch bag. So a Raw Intuition cinch bag. Can you see that? There you go. It's not the fanciest one, but it'll hold your, it'll, if you have the paperback copies, it'll hold your books, and anything else that you want to take on, whatever adventures you guys go on. So we're going to give away physical gifts this week, to end off the year along with the ebooks. So excited for you guys, whoever wins those. And again, thank you for your questions at the end of the show, and, all your comments throughout the show. So yeah, again, I appreciate everybody that's been here. This is the 17th show. And so, for all of you guys that have made this show as fun as it's been, and just asking all the great questions. So thanks again. All right. So now let's get into, some of these, chemicals or toxins that, could be impacting people's health that they might not be aware of. So do you want to start, Dr. Stephanie, with the first one that you thought of?
Yes, yes, I do. And I actually, when you and I were chatting and you were saying, okay, we'll each bring three ones or a few ones that we can, chat about.
Hmm.
I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about, and something I actually really want to bring awareness to is not necessarily what's in our products, but what could be in our homes, in our workplaces, even in our cars, and that's mold.
Mm.
Um, because this is something that I I think more awareness is being brought to this, but mold illness and toxicity is a driving factor behind a lot of different chronic illnesses and the unexplainable symptoms, just because mold can affect every organ system in the body. And I just wanted to bring a little bit of awareness to it. So what do you think, Matt? Do you think this is a good one to chat about today?
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I'm really
Okay,
glad you
great.
brought that up. Yeah.
Yay. Okay, good. Well, okay, so I'll just go ahead and briefly touch on it. So I always like to lay a little bit of context with anything that I bring up. So when it comes to mold, again, like I was mentioning, there's mold illness and toxicity that occurs when our bodies aren't able to properly eliminate it. But again, mold is an essential part of like our ecosystem, and like we wouldn't be here and thriving if it weren't for the different molds and fungi that are existing in our environment. The problem that arises with mold is when it has developed in an area where the count of those mold spores and that mold is actually greater inside versus outside. So you're starting to develop more of a toxicity of that growth that's occurring in the indoor environment. And it's estimated that around 50 to 70% of homes in America are dealing with some sort of mold issue. And so with mold, it can, like I was mentioning before, it can affect every organ system in our body. So that's, our digestive system. It can have neurological symptoms. It can have issues with our respiration, our respiratory symptoms, sinus issues, all these different kinds of symptoms that can arise from it. And excuse me. And when it comes to mold growing in an area indoors, what happens is it needs a few different things in order to thrive. So you need something that it can feed on. So it likes to feed on things that are easily degradable. So we think of like, like things that like are basically in the walls. So like wood and things like that. It likes to feed on those. The next thing that it needs is it needs poor ventilation. And then the last thing it needs is some moisture. So the moisture can come from whether you're living in an environment that's really humid, where the air is getting trapped, like it could be like Florida or like the Pacific Northwest. It could be if there was a little bit of a water damage, things like that. It can arise from a whole host of different things. But that's just something I wanted to kind of like lay the context for. But in terms of mold toxicity, I wanted to just bring to light a few different symptoms that can occur from struggling with mold illness. And I actually have my intake form because this is something I've been screening for now in the last couple of years, just because it's almost like a hidden epidemic having mold that's growing within the home. And so I did want to just bring up a couple of different symptoms that have been linked to mold exposure. And so a couple of them are, so neurological symptoms are going to be slurred speech, having frequent static shocks, having confusion, having any sort of like neuropathies, like tingling sensations that are occurring in like your arms or your legs. Another really common one is feeling like you're almost having this creepy crawling sensation underneath your skin. That's a really common one. Symptoms that occur in the congestion, like if you're having any sort of congestion, like in the respiratory symptoms are going to be like kind of like a cough, like lung irritation, having a persistent sore throat, having like a frequent postnasal drip are other ones as well. A couple other ones are going to be, this is very, very specific to mold exposure. And actually a part of what I didn't mention before with my own health journey was that actually after I got mononucleosis and it decreased my immune system to the point where I was super susceptible to things. I actually dealt with mold illness for a couple of years. And I'll dive into that in a minute, but some symptoms from that I personally had, and that is very specific to mold, is actually having this sensation of an internal vibration or tremor where it will feel like your body is in an earthquake, but you don't actually see yourself shaking. It is the most bizarre symptom in the world, but it is one of the most common symptoms with it. And one of the other ones too that I also experienced is having kind of like electric like shocks that you'll have along your body. So a common one that I had personally, and a lot of my patients will get this one too, is they'll feel like it's like a headache, like it'll be like a quick zap and then it's gone. And it's just like, what's going on? So it's some really interesting symptoms, but a couple other ones I wanted to touch on really quickly were like connective tissue symptoms too. So having like, or like any sort of skin symptoms too. So like hives, itching, pain in the joints, or like joints that pop out frequently as well. And so we think of mold as if a lot of people think of mold as just affecting like the respiratory tract. But like I mentioned, there's all different kinds of symptoms, like neurological symptoms and skin symptoms and nervous system symptoms, like the neurological symptoms I mentioned earlier. But now there's a 2018 review that actually showed that exposure to mold, if it is affecting you, that it can actually disrupt your gut as well. So not only is it affecting these different parts of our system, it can really like make a beeline for your gut, causing an increased intestinal permeability, also known as leaky gut. So a few different strains that have been linked. So one called ochratoxin A, that's a very, very common one in water damaged buildings. It's also found in different food products. It has been actually linked to decreasing your gut's immune system and leading to leaky gut. And then two other ones, trichothecenes, which is found from black mold, and aflatoxin, which is usually found on like peanuts and other kinds of products, food products, have actually been linked to decreasing mucin, which is important in creating like a mucosal gut integrity. So it can actually create like a bit of a leaky gut as well. So it's interesting, but with these mold species, some of them can really affect your gut too. And so I will get some patients that all their symptoms are clear. Like, I mean, sorry, symptoms, labs look good. Like they don't have bacteria overgrowth. They don't have a fungal overgrowth. They don't have, these different things. But then I start asking questions about, well, have you ever lived in a place with water damage? Or, I start asking some neurological symptoms, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe we should test to see if there is mold in your system. And this leads me to the next piece: is you can actually test to see if there is mold that's residing in you, because you can actually have, it could have been from a previous mold exposure like 20, 30 years ago. But that's,
Wow.
if your detox pathways aren't functioning optimally, then you have that mold that you were exposed to staying trapped essentially in your system. And it likes to hide in like our fat tissues and our tissues. So it, like a lot of other different kinds of chemicals that so you can actually test through urine testing, and you can actually measure and see if there are different mold species that are residing in you. And if that's the case, well, then we know, and we can actually treat and get slowly open up. The biggest thing with treating mold is really, one, getting out of the environment if it is in your current environment. But if it's not in your environment, it was a past exposure, the next step is really, again, opening up those detox pathways, focusing on those lifestyle factors we talked about: eating good foods, hydration, liver support, things like that. And then you can actually treat using binders very gently. There's different ones like bentonite clay, activated charcoal, zeolite, that you can use for specific mold strains, because every mold strain is different in how you treat it. But you essentially use it, and it does exactly as it sounds. It kind of binds onto whatever the toxin is you're using it for, to kind of gently get it out of the system. But I just wanted to bring a little bit of light to mold, because I think it's not talked about enough. I think it's starting to get talked about more, but it's, again, on that same sort of plane as environmental chemicals. It's starting, more people are talking about it. I think more people are starting to talk about mold now too. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. Wow. That was terrific. It's so relevant, I think, to so many people, because I know I've been in homes with mold. I think I'm gonna take that test that you mentioned, see if I can, see if there's anything, residual mold for me, because that's interesting. I didn't realize that it could stay in your system for so long.
Yes, 20 up to 30 years it can stay in your system. Yeah, definitely message me if you want to, if you're interested in that, for sure. There's
Yeah.
two labs that I like, that I consider to be the best one. One's called Real Time Labs for mycotoxin testing, and then the other one is called, it used to be called Great Plains, but now the company is called Mosaic Diagnostics. But those are the two. But the interesting thing with mold is that not only, can it just be floating around in your system and hide away in your tissues, but if you had been exposed to it for a long period of time, those spores, that basically, that's actually what makes mold illness so intense. Is it's not necessarily the mold itself, but it's these little spores that release off of the mold that float around in the air. You can't see them, but they're called mycotoxins. They can actually land on your food and drink, and if you ingest it, mold can colonize in your gut, creating a fungal overgrowth too, which is very, very interesting. So that's different than a candida overgrowth, even though they're both fungal overgrowths, but it's associated from whatever mold exposure that you've had, right? So
Mm.
it's very interesting. And more and more people are starting to become a little bit more susceptible, just from, you're more susceptible to developing a mold illness if your immune system is very low. That could be from stress, it could be from just lifestyle factors, all different things, right? Getting sick with a big viral load like COVID or mononucleosis. But 24%, but based off genetics, 24% of the population is susceptible, depending on if they have the HLA-DR gene or not. So that's another piece to it too. So there's a statistic out there that says that 1 in 4 people are affected by mold. So if a family of 4 could be living in a place growing black mold, and one person's sick, but all the other 3 are fine. And that's usually kind of how, and it's very confusing, because it's like, well, why wouldn't everybody be sick? So it can be hard to tease apart, right? If somebody's dealing with that. But yeah, the mold illness is something to keep in mind for the listeners too. If there's, because I know people that are coming on to listen to your show and to other health shows, they're looking for answers to or ways to support their health. And sometimes mold can be, I'm not saying it's everybody, it's not, but
Mhm.
sometimes it can be that, like, if you've done everything, every test, and you're like, I don't know what could still be driving some of my symptoms. And mold is actually a very it's a good one to look into for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely sounds like it. And it sounds like, the gut seems like the perfect place for, mold to kind of colonize, right? Because
Yeah.
it's uh anaerobic and it's moist and so I would imagine that, yeah, that could be a big factor in your gut health.
Yes, definitely. It definitely is actually. So yeah. So thanks for letting me go on that little spiel about mold.
Yeah.
I was like, that's going to be one thing I want to bring up today.
Yes, yeah. And it's funny. I was like really struggling to think of which three things I wanted to bring up, and
Right.
because there's so many, it's just like,
Funny.
man, which one do you choose? But yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't think of mold, and mold, yeah, that's such a great one.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the first one that I'll go over, it kind of relates to what you said about the mold can impact the mucin lining, or the mucin. And so the one that I came up with was surfactants and emulsifiers. So, a lot of these chemicals, so these are chemicals that are used as, in processed foods to combine, two ingredients like that would be opposing normally, like water and oil. And so if you put an emulsifier in there, it can, allow those two things to mix together more
Mhm.
easily and stay mixed together as they sit on the shelf. So, these emulsifiers, they're in processed foods, they're in soda, they're in, a bunch of personal care products, laundry detergents, things like this that again people are exposed to on a daily basis. And so even things, the first thing that kind of tipped me off to surfactants and emulsifiers, they're slightly different. So surfactants, emulsifiers are a surfactant. It's a type of surfactant. And so surfactants are in a lot of things that you want to like dissolve, like stains and laundry detergents, and it's a stabilizer. It's in detergents, and it's an anti-static agent. So it's in a lot of these products that we use in our clothes and also on our dishes. And that's what first kind of got me thinking about these things. Was I heard Dr. Clapper talking about how he helps people with gut issues, and one of the things that he recommends is for them to stop using detergents or dish soap that has these surfactants in them, because even when you rinse, you wash your dishes with these, whatever detergent it is, and any of the probably the commercial ones are going to have that, and it doesn't come fully off even when you dry, you wash it, you rinse it off, and you dry it, and so it sticks on to the dishes, and so then the next time you use them, it gets into the food or the drink that you're consuming, and that gets into your intestinal tract, and that can affect the mucus layer and lead to, a leaky gut, and impact those tight junctions. And so that's one of the things that is in my intake form is, what's your detergents, what dish soaps do you use, these sorts of things, because a lot of people don't realize that every time they're using these soaps, they're putting these chemicals onto their, their dishes. And so they're ingesting these every single day. And so that's something that, I think is one of the less known impacts on gut health and just overall health that people can start looking at. It's your, what soaps are using, what detergents, and what, things like that can be a problem. And so some of the names, I just had to look this up. So some of the names of some of these, um, emulsifying agents are, emulsifiers are polysorbate 80. I think a lot of people have heard of that one. Carrageenan is one of them. Polyglycerol. Any of, or at least it looks like most of the gums that people, or that are in some of these things, like xanthan gum and some of these other gums, guar gums, and lecithins. And so these are in, these are pretty ubiquitous in the food supply when it comes to processed foods and things. So definitely something to pay attention to, because that can affect the gut, and it can lead to downstream issues that leaky gut is known for, which is increased absorption of bacterial endotoxins like LPS, which leads to various inflammatory conditions. And some of the foods that that this is in would be things like mayonnaise, margarines, meat products, ice creams, salad dressings, chocolate, peanut butter, other nut butters, and shelf-stable frostings, cookies, crackers, creamy sauces. So it's in a lot of these things that people are buying. Even if they're vegan, they can still have these chemicals in them. So you got to be careful anytime you're consuming processed anything, whether it's vegan or not. There's the potential to be taking in some of these chemicals that can be having a negative effect on gut health. So that's my first one. What do you think about emulsifiers and surfactants?
I gotta say that's a great one to bring up. And I love that you kind of tied that into, we were talking about the gut health piece, but I always like to think about these things too, like these environmental chemicals, like what's their goal of what they're doing in that product? Think about when you're exposing yourself to it, what that's going to do to you, right? So
Right.
like you just said, like you're using it on, the surfactants and different things like that. Like imagine that going into your gut and sticking there and then
Right.
creating that. And like you said, like so that lining that's separating our gut, our GI tract from our systemic blood flow is like one cell wall thick. And so it doesn't take much to disrupt it. And you're putting something in your system that is meant to just, clean off all these different particles that are on the things that you're cleaning, and then imagine it doing that to your system. So no, I think that was a really great one to bring up. And there's been some very specific research too, like on polysorbate 80 and the different ones that you mentioned, but and carrageenan, like causing very, very even aside from leaky gut, leading to specifically carrageenan, I believe, has now been linked to creating irritable bowel disease. Like it's a contribution to it, right? So like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. And polysorbate 80 is something that I always tell. So I have a list of different ones that I'll talk with my patients about, because I work with patients that deal with mast cell activation syndrome, who basically these are patients that are just very sensitive to many things in their environment due to having been exposed to some big toxic overload. So their cells, these mast cells, they're part of our immune system. They sense what's in the environment internally, externally. If they get overstimulated, they start to respond to a lot of things. Those agents you mentioned, most of those are very common ones that they're very sensitive to, especially polysorbate 80. So I love that you brought that up, because it's so intricate and small, but it actually it's huge. These things, they add up, and you get exposed to it day after day after day. Imagine that effect it's having on your gut. Your gut comprises of making 70% of our hormones. It affects our hormones and can affect so many different parts of our body too. So that was a great one. I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I'll bring up my next one then.
Perfect.
So it's actually funny. I don't know if you were going to bring this one up, but it goes alongside what you were saying. I was actually going to talk about pesticides.
Hmm.
Is that what you were going to bring up?
I didn't have that one, but that's a great one.
Okay.
I did think about that one.
Yeah. I was wondering if you were going to as well, because we're both we love our food. So I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
bet he's gonna bring up it. Well, I'm sure we'd both have good talking points on it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um yeah, so I'm sure so many of your listeners are very aware of pesticides and what gets sprayed on our products. And I felt like it was a good next one to bring up after you talking about the emulsifiers and the surfactants, because again, it's thinking, okay, well, what's that job like in the environment, but then we ingest it, what's that doing to our system? So we now know that a lot of the different types of pesticides, like for example, glyphosate, they can act as antibiotics to our gut and to our system. And so the goal of these, different products is to help kill off different, bugs and things that might be coming in to attack the food products. And these so much of our produce now is sprayed with different types of herbicides and pesticides. And so I wanted to bring up opting for organic as often as you can, because those non-organic produce, even if you are washing them with baking soda and vinegar on the outside, there's something called systemic pesticides. It's a type of pesticide that what happens is these pesticides are actually injected into the soil. So they, instead of being sprayed on top of the crop, they're actually being injected into the soil, which gets into the root system, which then gets into the actual vegetable or fruit or grain or whatever it is that you're consuming. So no amount of washing or cleaning it or anything will get rid of it, because it's actually in the root system. It's in the product that you're consuming. And I don't want to say this to be dire or to scare anybody. I'm just saying it as often as you can, try to opt for organic. And then I still recommend, even if it's not organic, washing your produce, just because you're still getting rid of some surface pesticide residue, herbicide residue, things like that. But and my tip for washing things is usually like baking soda and water. So just using a few teaspoons of baking soda with some water, it usually does the trick. Or in white vinegar is really wonderful as well for that. But I just want to bring awareness to the systemic pesticide piece. And then the other piece to it, and this gets talked about a lot, I see on social media, and I'm not sure what your stance is on this, but I'll bring it up, is so the Environmental Working Group, the EWG, they're really, really wonderful at bringing up um, talking points about what's in our environment and what's going on, and bringing awareness basically to a lot of things. They have a great platform, and I love some of the studies that they've done, and their site for things that they rate, that's good. And but they have this list that comes out every year. It's called the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen, and it's basically saying, okay, so these Clean 15, these ones are typically the ones that don't get sprayed. So that's like, so it's badly or whatever. So usually that's okay. So like you can buy these ones, but these Dirty Dozen lists, these are the ones you definitely want to get organic. But there's research that came from Dr. Lynn Patrick a few years ago that showed that EWG, they're not taking into account the toxicity of each pesticide, just the amount. But between each pesticide, there is a 6,000-fold difference between the relative toxicity of each of them.
Wow.
So, for example, something that's on the Clean 15 maybe has like one pesticide that's sprayed on it, compared to one that's on the Dirty Dozen that has like 20. But let's say that one that's sprayed has a toxicity that's 6,000 times greater than even what's combined that's being used on that one product in the Dirty Dozen. So I see a lot of people on social saying, just go for the Clean 15 Dirty Dozen. I'm always like, no, don't do that. So I'm, do what you can to make it work. But if having this knowledge, if you can try to opt for organic or go locally, shop locally, with farmers that you trust, that is going to be your best bet in reducing your exposure to pesticides. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, there's different things that pesticides have been linked to, and I'm always focusing on gut health, but it's been shown that a lot of pesticides have actually been linked to reducing beneficial bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, which we need those. Those are two very big ones, big strains that are found in our gut microbiome that help to, again, like you mentioned, talking about the LPS, the inflammation, that help to create less inflammation in our gut when we have a good diverse species of these really beneficial bacteria. And these pesticides can come in and just mow them over. So reducing exposure to that, to pesticides, is a big one.
100%, yeah. And that's such good information about the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen, because yeah, I've heard that, and that is why I personally try to always, 99% of what I get is organic. But even better, like you said, if you can get it from like a local farmer, or at a farmer's market, personally, so all of our vegetables, in Minnesota, we don't get too many fruits at the farmer's market, unfortunately. I wish we did, but all of our vegetables this summer came from the farmer's market. We really didn't buy anything, maybe a few carrots here and there, but yeah, it all came from the farmer's market. We have amazing organic farmers here, and I I don't know if it was placebo or what, but I felt so good, from really getting all my produce from from our local farmers market. And yeah, I think that is a great way to go if you're lucky enough to have good organic farms at your farmers market. And yeah, a lot of these pesticides are estrogenic, and so they also are endocrine disruptors. And I hear people that talk about um, you know and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, but when somebody says to me like, oh, it's fine because the amount of pesticides that are left on the produce, even if it's conventional, is so small that it doesn't really matter. But from what I've learned is that there's something called a non-monotonic dose response, which is a phenomenon that as the amount gets smaller, it starts to act as a hormone. And so the toxicity of very tiny amounts of something can actually be more toxic than a larger amount because it turns into it has a hormone acting effect. And so that's why the argument that these tiny amounts of the pesticides are safe, I don't think is necessarily true. So I don't know if you have heard that, or what your thoughts are on that.
No, I have heard that, and I actually do believe in that. I really do. And also, that's such a good point that you brought up was like high versus low exposure. And that's another piece too that I think it's hard for some people to kind of relate to, in the sense that, well, if I just use this one product that has this one toxin in it, or if I just eat this one thing, what the research is, and this is why there isn't a ton of research just on toxins and chemicals in general, is because most of the time we're not exposed to really high amounts of these things. I mean, unless you some crazy mercury exposure or something like that, but it's a lot of our exposure is in these chronic low doses. So it's like over time. What I mean by chronic is like over time, and then like years, and then or months and years, and then low doses, so low amounts. But what happens with these low amounts, and I know this, is that that's the problem. That's when it just starts to slowly build up in our system over and over, and slowly start to decrease our body's ability to detox, and again, really affect our gut, which we know Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut, right? So it's if something's makes a beeline for our gut, that's not good. So but over time these things start to degrade the different things that are in place in our bodies to help us to keep us healthy. And so I think, kind of going off of what you said with that piece, like, it makes sense too. It's just that it's these chronic low doses of things we're exposed to that build up in our bodies over time, that's where we see the issue. And that's why there isn't a ton of research on a lot of these different a lot of these different environmental chemicals, because it's so hard to do research on chronic low doses. It's easier to do it on these large doses of things that you see acutely having effects versus chronically. So
Yeah. Yeah, and most of the testing is on their carcinogenic effects rather than they don't
right,
really test for endocrine disruption or,
right.
other issues that could be associated with it. So and then there's kind of what you mentioned is, is it so 84,000 different chemicals in the environment, and only like 1% have had safety
Hmm.
testing done. And that in itself, even because they're testing the isolated, like the active ingredient,
Right.
whereas they're not testing the synergistic effects, what they call the cocktail effect, of where you take one chemical and the the effects from that is so much, and then You take another chemical and you combine it with it, and the toxicity goes up. It could go up, 1,000-fold. And so, there's all these, when we look at the pesticides we're consuming, when we look at the different chemicals in our, laundry detergents, in our clothing, in our beauty care products, all these different things that, could be coming together in the body, and who knows what those effects are really having.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you brought that up too. It's so true. And that's kind of just bringing it to the food piece, like just what we eat as whole, and like why whole plant foods are so good, and why you can't mimic it in a supplement. And even though supplements are part of my practice in terms of, what I treat with the gut and things like that. But the basis of any health foundation is food. It's what you give yourself in nutrients from your food. And that's how food works. It's like vitamin C in pill form is not going to be the same as eating it from a kiwi or eating it from an orange, because it's that synergistic effect of the vitamin C mixed with all the other amazing nutrients and the fiber and all these beautiful things you get from your food versus in a supplement form too. So I feel like we see that in nature and also in chemicals.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great stuff. Great stuff.
I know.
Um, yeah, and I'm glad. I don't know. Did you? So I don't know if you brought this one up, but parabens, or I don't know if you had this on your list, but parabens is
No,
another
that's
one
not
that.
my last one.
Okay, all right. So parabens would be my next one.
Mm.
And so, parabens are basically, they're antimicrobial preservatives that are used in a lot of these products. And it's also a common ingredient in fragrances. So pretty much anything with fragrance is going to have parabens in them. And so these are also endocrine disrupting chemicals. They're anti-androgenic, which means they suppress testosterone, and they're also they say they're slight estrogenics, but they have that anti-androgenic effect as well. So, but they can aggravate skin conditions, psoriasis, eczema, dermatitis, things like this. And they're going to be found in, again, perfumes, cosmetics like makeup and other, things like that have fragrance. They're in skincare products, laundry detergents, body sprays, deodorants, a lot of household products, pharmaceutical products, and food and beverages, right? Because they're a preservative, and so they're going to be used in a lot of these things that just sit on a shelf. And so if you're buying something that has a long shelf life, there's a good chance that there could be parabens in there. And then companies are catching on to the fact that people are trying to avoid parabens, so you're finding a lot of products out there that are paraben free. I actually haven't looked into this. I'm wondering if you've seen anything on this, Dr. Stephanie. Is there, because I know with like they've, in a lot of products, they've gone away from BPA, right, bisphenol A, but then they're replacing it with like bisphenol F or by another of the bisphenols, and which have just as bad, or if not worse, effects. So when you find a product that says paraben free, do you know what they're replacing that with? Are they just getting rid of it? I wouldn't think so, because it's a preservative, right?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I actually am not, I haven't dived into that. I don't
Okay.
know if they're replacing it with like a more like you said, like BPA is such a perfect example. Because there's like 30 different variants of BPA,
Yeah.
sorry, bisphenol and parabens. I'm not sure if what they're using to replace it with, like if it's like more harmful or not. But I will say that whenever I see something on a label that says it does not contain, and it has like a list of 10 things, I'm always like, all right, flip the label, because I'm like, I am so my like intent or whatever, my alert
Yeah.
system goes off because I'm like, well, what do you contain then? So let's take a look. But that's something I want to make sure to mention too, is that yeah, it says paraben free, and that's great. But then yeah, who knows whatever else is in there.
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly. And so parabens are, they're associated with cancers and hormone disruption and obesity, and infertility, weaker sperm in men. So Um, yeah, again, these chemicals are are pretty much, in everyday, things that people are exposed to every single day, and
Yeah.
multiple times a day. And, especially if it's in your laundry detergents, or, what you wash your bedding with, because, we're pretty much in contact with clothing or bedding, you know, almost 24/7 of our lives. And so you're constantly being in contact, and they do absorb transdermally, so that you can absorb them through your skin, and that will get into your system. And so, if you're in contact with these hormone disrupting chemicals 24/7 of your life, it's no wonder why there's so many people dealing with issues that have to do with hormones and cancers and things like this, or infertility. And so, yeah, just another chemical that's being used in all these products that you should be aware of. And so some of the names also. So if you turn the label over and you look at the ingredient list, so some of the things you might see for parabens, it's going to have paraben in the name, but it's going to be like towards the end. So methylparaben, propylparaben, ethylparaben, butylparaben, isobutylparaben, and isopropylparaben. So, they've got all these long names, but if it's got paraben in there, that's definitely something to be aware of, and find products, without it, but do your best to just, find a way to live with as few products as you can, and I think you'll be better off.
I think that was such a great one that you brought up, and it's amazing how many of them, when you think about all these different chemicals, it's amazing, like the links, like they all just kind of do the same thing. They're all hormone disrupting. They're
Yeah.
disrupting our delicate endocrine system, and they're disrupting our gut. Like two, they're in other things as well, right? But those are like two places I see over and over that it's just we're seeing a lot of this. Just they make a beeline for that, and like your thyroid gland, and just so many different areas that are so in our endocrine system, our hormone system, it's so delicate. I mean, just on a normal basis on how it functions normally, it's our body releases a certain amount, and it that, like, to keep things moving properly in our system, to maintain homeostasis and to have things functioning optimally, right? It does not take much to disrupt that system. It really doesn't. And so, like you said, like if you're using something with parabens, but you're using it in your detergent and then your cosmetics and then your hair products, and they absorb through the skin to get into your systemic circulation, and then go to affect the different hormone systems. And it's crazy that yeah, it's just that exposure constantly over time, just thinking about like our delicate hormone system. Well, that's why we see infertility on the rise, and we see such a decrease in sperm count since, like, I believe there's an amazing book that was written actually. Oh my gosh, I'll have to tell you about it. You probably have already read it or know about it, but talking about that infertility on the rise. I can't think of it right now, but and the decrease in sperm count that we've seen over the years, it's by the thousands. It's unbelievable.
Mm,
Just because of the chemical, a lot of it's linked to the chemicals that are in our products. But parabens was a great one to bring up.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, my last one was actually talking about like nonstick. So I don't
Mm.
know if that was one you were going to bring up, but I
Nope.
was gonna. Oh,
Nope.
yay, okay,
That's a
good.
that's a good one though.
Yes, yes. So and I'm sure you do this too with your clients on your intake form, but I'm just going to preface this with saying that a lot of the things that I like to, when I'm working with somebody and reducing what they're exposed to, my order of importance, I mean, it's important to try to reduce everything, but is what are you getting exposed to the most, right? Like so like, are we filtering our water? We drink tons of water there. We're made up of 60% water. Like our cells need water to thrive, right? So that's important. Like, what are we eating, right? So pesticides, eating it, so we want to make sure we reduce that, and eat good quality fruits and vegetables. And then air filtration and those things. Those are my big ones. And then another one is going to be, what are you cooking with? Because again, you're eating what, 3 meals a day, some snacks, whatever. Like, you want to make sure what you're cooking with is not absorbing into your food that is toxic, right? And so I wanted to bring up nonstick. So it's the PFAS family. So they're per and polyfluorinated alkyl substances. Okay, I said that right. Good. It's such a long
Yeah.
name. And it's comprised of a family of like 4,000 different chemicals. And these are known as the forever chemical, which means that they take years to break down, like in the environment, but also in our bodies too. But so where they're found is found in a lot of nonstick cookware. They're also found in like outdoor gear too, because of the fact that it's nonstick. So like camping gear or like, raincoats, things like that. They're also found in like dental floss, a lot of conventional dental flosses because of the nonstick glide that like, companies like Crest will create and things like that. So what PFAS are specifically, and this was over in a 2018 and 2020 review of what PFAS are linked to, and I wrote them down just so I don't forget them, is obesity, low sperm count, thyroid disease, increasing cholesterol, breast cancer, testicular cancer, liver damage, and even irritable bowel disease, specifically ulcerative colitis. And so they've linked to a whole host of different things. Basically, they don't just affect like one system, like your hormone system or your gut. They're very systemic. It's pretty much almost, it's like mold, kind of just affecting all different areas of the body systemically. And so ways to reduce it are, again, I always look to what are we cooking with? So common one is the nonstick Teflon. It's so easy to cook with. And I think a lot of people, especially transitioning to plant-based eating, trying to reduce oils and things like that will kind of, and I know I was victim to, I did this as well. I'm
Me
not
too.
perfect. I
Me
mean,
too.
all the, yeah. And so I was like, perfect, non-stick. This is great. I'm being healthy.
Yeah.
And so, like Teflon, for example, and like that's in our air fryers and all these things. It's so convenient to use without having to use oils and things like that. But those are the ones that really will affect you so much, because when it gets heated, it gets absorbed into the food or whatever it is you're cooking with, and then you ingest it. But there was a recent study done about a year ago that showed just like one scratch on a Teflon pan, I believe, like it spreads out, or I can't think of the word right now. It's like 9,000 PFAS particles or something like that,
Wow.
that gets absorbed into your food or whatever. It releases, sorry, release, that's the word I'm looking for. And it's bad enough when you're cooking with it, but then if you have a scratched pan, nonstick pan, and you're cooking with that, that's even worse. And so that's something to keep in mind too. If you have any scratched nonstick pans, throw them all out. But the best things to cook with, in my personal opinion, I love like a good like stainless steel set, like 1810 food grade. Also love, I know there's a little bit of controversy on cast iron. I like cast iron here and there. I really do. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's great. And then glass for like bakeware, just make sure that it's been third party tested, because glass can also contain lead. So it can contain some heavy metals too. So that's something to look forward into. And then another one is 100% ceramic pans. So that is, there's only, I think, maybe two companies that I'm aware of that have 100% ceramic. One of them is Extrema, and I know there was another one I think I've seen before, but the reason why is because you want to make sure it's one third party tested too, because then ceramic can also contain different heavy metals, which you want to be careful about as well. But there will be a ton of different types of pans and things out there that will say it's ceramic coated, but what it's coated over is usually like an aluminum core or something that contains, it's usually an aluminum core. And so then you're absorbing aluminum into your system, which we know that has toxic effects when it's been built up in our bodies as well. So I always say opt for the stainless steel 1810 food grade, cast iron, glass when it's been third party tested, and 100% ceramic. And then be careful of the air fryers. Those are a big one that a lot of people are using now, but I would say the majority of them do have Teflon. So making sure you're getting a good glass stainless steel one for that purpose. And then just being aware of where you're buying like your outdoor products from, like what you're using. There's actually great outdoor products now that are PFAS free. So yeah, so that was one I wanted to bring up. It's just because it's in the kitchen and easy to get exposed to.
Yeah, that's perfect. I too, I was a big user of the nonstick pans back in the day, and so
Yeah.
um, definitely something that I do see a lot of people still using. And yeah, it's kind of concerning. But thanks for bringing that up. And,
Yeah.
and yeah, you mentioned the aluminum. I almost that's what I was gonna bring for one of mine, but I switched it. I maybe should have kept it because my last one, I didn't know if I should. There's probably some better ones I could have done, but yeah, the aluminum. I mean, what I don't think many people realize is that that water municipalities put aluminum into the water supply, right? As a it takes out particles or something. It helps them clump together so they can remove them. It's like a clarifying agent or something like that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, people are getting aluminum in their tap water if they're drinking tap water, along with, whatever other heavy metals are coming out of the pipes, or, the disinfection byproducts that happen when chlorine or chloramine interacts with organic
Yes.
matter that,
Yeah.
there's just so many things that, and the fluoride, that I almost use fluoride as well as one of the points of mine, but I ended up going with saturated fat, and it's not, it's just, it's probably not something that as many people that are watching this show are consuming, unless they're big or well, even olive oil, but mostly like coconut oil or palm oil. You know, but for I just heard an interesting stat, or an interesting finding on saturated fat recently, and I just wanted to bring that to the people. So saturated fat, as you guys know, is it's inflammatory. It's high amounts of saturated fat will diminish gut microbiome diversity. It also impacts the tight junctions, and again leads to leaky gut. It also creates the need for more bile. So when we eat high fat foods, especially like saturated fat, we need to the liver produces more bile, and
Mhm.
that requires bacteria to be present that will break down some of that bile, and they create secondary bile acids, which are very inflammatory and hard on the gut. So there's all these different things that I've known for a while about saturated fat, but what I just learned is that saturated fat has been shown to cause inflammation in the hypothalamus, which then creates resistance to hormones like insulin and leptin. And so it can lead to overeating and obesity or just weight gain, because for whatever reason it impacts the hypothalamus, and that's I guess part of the brain that has to do with recognizing leptin and insulin. And so if you're not recognizing the leptin, that's kind of the hormone that lets you know that you've eaten enough, or that you're full or satisfied. And so, yeah, it can lead to overeating. So if you know anybody, this can, since most people here probably aren't eating that much saturated fat, it's maybe something you can share with your loved ones or family members. Um, on top of the increased LDL cholesterol that saturated fat contributes to, and impairs artery function, and people, I don't think people realize that they're living in, especially people that eat animal products, they're in this postprandial state for like 16 plus hours a day, and that's when the impact on the arteries is the most detrimental, right? So that's when it's got all those inflammatory things going on, and so it inhibits the artery function, like several hours after a high fat meal. And then as it goes down, as it's starting to kind of, calm down a little bit, we have another meal and shoots right back up again. And so, most people eat almost from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed. And, a lot of times, most standard American, most standard dieters are consuming high amounts of animal protein and saturated fat. And so that's just another thing that I think should be known, is that it can actually affect, if weight loss is a concern of yours, the impact on our insulin and leptin sensitivity by consuming saturated fat. So thought that was kind of interesting.
Oh, that is, I haven't heard that. That's actually Very interesting. And I got really excited when you said saturated fats, because I feel like that was a clever one to bring up, because I was thinking like products or environment.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
love that. Yeah, that's odd, because it's a huge toxin, and it's been linked to, like you said, like, obviously increasing cholesterol, the LDL, and heart disease, and even type 2 diabetes, and a lot of our high blood pressure, and just having such a toxic effect on our whole system. And that's a big thing that I do. You know, most of my patients aren't plant-based, and when I'm working on repairing their gut, one of the biggest things I'm saying is just, we got to reduce as much saturated fat as we can, because it is very detrimental to our gut and to just overall, like, our overall health, obviously. But that's very interesting with the leptin piece, and that makes a lot of sense, because it's like the pleasure trap, if you've ever read that book by Dr. Goldhammer. And it's like,
yep,
with whatever is in all our products that we're eating, it's artificially stimulating that dopamine response, which makes us crave it, and we just want it more. And then it makes us like passively overeat, and that just makes it kind of ties in a bit with the with how it affects that ability for our body to know if we're full or not. So we're just overeating, and then leading to that weight gain. So yeah,
yeah,
that's very interesting.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely thought so too. It's it's just funny how there's so many different things you can point out about a lot of these, like saturated fat or animal protein. It just seems like there's a link to so many different aspects of health. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's amazing. Well,
yeah,
this was fun. Oh my gosh, we learned stuff from each other, and that
yeah,
was very, very cool. Wow. I love that. Thanks
yeah.
for bringing up all those really great points. That was so interesting to hear about the saturated fat part.
Yeah,
Wow.
my pleasure. I appreciate all the wisdom you shared as well. That was
Thank
terrific,
you.
and I've been kind of keeping an eye on the chat over here. Everybody's loving it. So, thank
Oh,
you
good.
again everybody for sticking around and listening to us. And now it is time for the Q&A. So, everybody get your questions ready. Again, you're going to win, or you're going to have a chance to win a copy of 5-Star Digestion. You're also going to get a copy of Dr. Stephanie's ebook called Everyday Chemicals That Make Us Gain Weight. And then I'm also going to send out 2 cinch raw intuition cinch bags. All right. So get excited for that. All right. So let's hop over into the Q&A room. Here we go. All right. Get in front of the blackboard here. All right. So guys, if you can just well, I guess once we yeah, you don't have to put the question marks before your question, but definitely yeah, let's get some questions going in here and see what you guys got for us and see who's going to win these incredible gifts. All
Mhm.
right. While we wait for the first couple questions to come in, I was going to ask you about the mold. So, is there, so like, our windows get, especially during this time of year when it gets cold and then it gets warm, and like we get some mold around some of the windows in here.
Like a mildew?
Yeah, like a mildew.
Okay.
Is that does that have the same effect as like a black mold, or no? No? No, okay.
No, no, it doesn't. No. And somebody that is some patients of mine, like, that have that mast cell activation piece, where they are just so sensitive to everything, that's when they will be. But in terms of like that mildew that's developing like around the windows or things like that, like, no, it doesn't really have like any toxic effects. So
Hmm.
that's always always good. But yeah, no, it's yeah, it won't have the same effects as like black mold or mold that's growing behind the walls or things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a good
Cool.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. Thanks for answering it.
Yeah.
All right. Annie said, I try to use all plant-based dish soap and laundry detergent. Do you recommend any brand?
Oh, okay. So plant-based dish soap, and gosh, so I love and detergent. So I love my gosh, I have it. I'm totally blanking. Let me actually just like look it up really quickly.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
one that I use, I have my personal favorite product that I use. I don't know why I'm totally missing the name, but in terms of like detergent, like Molly's Suds actually makes one of my favorite like dishwasher pods. And also they also make really great like laundry detergent as well. So that's one of mine, but I'll look up my dish soap. But Matt, do you have one that you?
Yeah, Molly Suds is actually what we use as well. We use a couple different methods. Sometimes we'll use Molly Suds. Sometimes we even use Bronner's, and sometimes we use just white vinegar and baking soda. Um, and so
That's great.
Celine, my partner, does usually does the laundry, so she would be much better at like explaining how we use those things. But yeah, we've been using Molly Suds for years now, and um,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, I found the name of the dish soap I use. It's called Better Life. I
Hmm.
love them. They're wonderful. So I'll use that for like if we're just like cleaning something really quick and not putting it away, sorry, in the dishwasher. But yeah, so Better Life is the one that I will also use.
Nice. All right, cool. And to be honest, I actually don't use when I wash my dishes because I eat mostly raw food and it's just fruits and vegetables. I just use hot water and a brush and I don't even use soap. So I haven't used soap on my dishes for, years. And so
It's amazing.
yeah. But yeah,
It's
if you've got hard stuck stuff on there, then yeah, definitely. So let's see. Um Tessa says, "Has Dr. Stephanie ever gotten a colonic?" I don't know if that's too personal, but
Oh, yeah, no,
or
actually, it's not
what are
too
your
personal.
thoughts on colonics?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I actually do think that they are good when indicated. I think that oftentimes, I've never actually gotten one, by the way. Sorry, I meant to answer that. I've never personally gotten one.
Okay.
Um, I think that they are okay when indicated. I think that oftentimes it tends to get rushed into as opposed to supporting other areas of the body um first before diving in or figuring out like the why, like why are what are your symptoms and why is it that you want to jump into getting a colonic versus like looking to other areas that like might be having some like dysfunction along like the GI tract or things that might need some further support, right? Like looking to like our digestive enzymes or stomach acid or bile flow, like all these different things that like could really be helping to, right? Like working on diversifying our good gut species. So um I'm okay with them. I've never actually recommended one for a patient personally, but I'm not fully against them. I'm really not. It's never been something that I've ever recommended. But yeah. I
Cool.
don't know if you have any thoughts on it, Matt, but
Um, I have pretty much the same view as you. I did them. I've done maybe like
okay.
10 in my life. I did them like over a decade
Yeah.
ago when I first started getting into this lifestyle, and I was kind of learning about gut health and like cleaning out the gut. Yeah, I did a couple different series of colonics, and honestly, I loved them. Like it really, I felt so good afterwards, and I think it can be useful, especially in the beginning when you're trying to get some of that gunk out. But um, I do think some people may overuse them and get a little carried away with them. So um, yeah, that's just
Yeah.
my observation.
Yeah. Same here. Yeah.
Annie says, or wait, no, sorry. Music Monster Man says, so let's see. We covered the dish soap. He says what toothpastes are safe. I use a cinnamon one from Redmond.
Oh, is that like the Redmond brand that makes the salt and
I think so.
the
I wonder if he's talking about earth paste.
Oh,
Is it?
Earth Paste, yes.
Hmm.
That's such a great brand. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
wonderful. I love Redmond. I personally use Rise Well.
Hmm.
I actually have a giveaway going on right now on my Instagram for Rise
Cool.
Well toothpaste. If anyone here is interested, it ends next Thursday and you get access to their full product line valued at $144. I sound like a marketing person, but
No, I love
but
it.
it's like all these different amazing things. So they make amazing mouthwash, toothpaste and flosses and toothbrushes as well. But the reason why I like them is because so a lot of toothpaste, are made with fluoride. I know earth paste is not, but A lot are made with fluoride because it was, it's common to think, oh, I know Matt, you were probably going to bring this up today as one of your talking points. I know you know all about this, to strengthen our teeth, but actually it's very interesting. Fluoride gets used in our water too. But actually what fluoride's been linked to is, modeling of our teeth and dental fluorosis, which is creating actually weaker teeth. And it has actually been linked to osteoporosis and decreasing bone density too. So to swap out fluoride, we need something else to help strengthen our teeth. And something that actually has been linked to that is something called hydroxyapatite. 97% of our tooth enamel is actually made up of hydroxyapatite. So that's actually the best swap in for that fluoride to help make sure that you're still strengthening your teeth. And then what else they use in their products too is something called xylitol, which is, it helps to prevent that like dirty bacteria buildup that can occur that leads to cavities as well. So their mouthwashes and all their stuff is created with this, and their even their floss has hydroxyapatite in it. So when you're flossing, you're getting it in between the teeth too. So that's my personal favorite is Risewell. My other favorite, I actually do like Dr. Bronner's. I like their ingredients too. And yeah, there's a couple others that are really good out there as well, but I'd say Risewell is my number one.
Nice. I haven't tried that one. I'm gonna have to pick that up, and definitely I'm gonna go look at your giveaway. And I suggest everybody else do the same thing. Um, let's see. Music Monster Man says, "So are you saying the carnivore diet is not optimal for human health?"
Yes, it's exactly what I'm saying.
uh, I mean, I think most people probably know, but do you have any thoughts on the carnivore diet and like I don't know if you've ever had any patients come in that have been on that and what their gut health looked like.
Oh, yes, absolutely. This is the problem I see is that, and this is what my heart breaks for so many people is that, when they're dealing with gut issues, fiber is one thing that will irritate their gut because their gut's so inflamed that, even though you're eating such good foods, and that's what happened to me, by the way, as I was switching to a plant-based diet, can actually be a little bit harder on the GI system. And so a lot of people will then switch over into being carnivore because they're like, well, let me just get rid of all the fiber and all these things. And then they feel amazing on it. Right. And so that makes sense. And so I'll get patients that, for example, I had a patient who came to me that never really had gut issues before, but had type 2 diabetes, and hemoglobin A1C was above 12%, which normal is at 5.7%. And that's a measurement of blood glucose markers over a period of 3 months. It's one of the best ways to diagnose type 2 diabetes. And he had been on a carnivore diet or like a ketogenic diet, basically, and had felt amazing. And like his numbers had kind of gone down a little bit, but other things were starting to pop up for him. So he was having horrible nerve pain, like absolutely like just traveling up from a common thing that's a complication of type 2 diabetes is nerve pain that will start in like in the hands and the feet and work its way upward. And it was happening all over his body. It was at 10 out of 10 pain constantly. So what we had to do was actually do water fasting. So to jumpstart it. So we did a 5-day water fast. Nerve pain stayed at about an 8 out of 10 up until day 3. Day 4, it went down to like a 6 out of 10. And then day 5, completely gone, hasn't had it since. And we did this about a year ago. Then transitioned over into a whole food plant-based diet, slowly increasing fiber. Type 2 diabetes numbers look good, but then gut issues started to come up. So that was interesting, was seeing, okay, so you had been deficient in fiber for a long time. So now we started to increase the fiber. So them kind of teasing apart, okay, well, what's going on in the gut? But I'll get patients too that have been on carnivore for a long time and they're so scared to transition over into a whole food plant-based diet. And I completely just like, my heart breaks because I'm like, oh man, they just want to be out of pain so badly, but not fixing the underlying issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, the carnivore diet, just like we talked about with saturated fat, such a high amount of inflammation that you're basically with your poor arteries that are just getting, constantly inflamed from that saturated fat and other things that are, if you're not eating, higher quality, animal products, then, that will definitely create more of an issue too. But I think I just forgot the question, but I guess the question is carnivore diet. Yes, it's inflammatory for so many things and it can make people feel good in the moment because you're reducing fiber, but that's not the thing. It's we want to always understand, well, what's causing you to react to the fiber, not, let's not dampen it with a band-aid and completely take out fiber, which we need. We got to figure out what's going on, and then we can eliminate that or focus on supporting whatever in your body needs it, and then we can slowly add that fiber back in to diversify your gut, because we know from the American Gut Project that was done a few years ago, showed that the best marker for overall health was individuals who ate 30 or more different varieties of plants per week, right? So yeah, carnivore diet, not a good one to do.
Absolutely.
So
Yes, I
yeah.
love that. Carl says, when outside in the rain, is it best to avoid the rain or is it beneficial for you?
Because there are sadly things that now are in our rain. I think even PFAS
Glyphosate? Oh,
is
PFAS is in there too.
glyphosate.
Wow.
Yeah, PFAS is now. There was a recent article that came out about PFAS in our rain, which was, I was just blown away by that one. But
Mm,
I think it's forever chemical and everything. But yeah, glyphosate, pesticides, and I don't even know other things that might be in it. But yeah,
yeah.
unfortunately, I think there is. But I still take the stance on, we got to do what we can control, but these things, if we can support our bodies by avoiding things majority of the time and then eating good foods like plant foods and hydration and things like that, then going outside and stepping in some rain and being outside, I think is nice. But that's just my personal view on it. I think when we hyper focus on too many things, I'm not saying this person is hyper focusing on it. I just meant,
Hmm.
I think we hyper focus too much. I think that in itself creates stress, which then is a toxin to our system too. So just nice little balance there.
Yeah, totally. I have thought about that too, because we do live around a lot of cornfields, unfortunately. So,
Oh
I
my
mean, I'm
goodness.
sure it's in our air even. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate, but yeah, like you said, it's really about minimizing your toxic load as much as you possibly can. Like control what you can control, and as
Yeah.
long as you've supported your detox pathways and the overall health of your body, hopefully we can be exposed to some of these things and be able to detox them efficiently before they cause
Yes.
problems. But yeah, it's a toxic world for it's been this way for quite a while, unfortunately. But hopefully we can turn it around. I'm hopeful that more people like Dr. Stephanie are out there talking about this stuff. More awareness will come about, and we'll finally find a non-toxic alternative to a lot of these things that we've been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Music Monster Man says he's been having issues with a lot of allergic-like reactions to foods. He suspects histamines.
Mm.
Basically, he has nasal congestion, headaches, chest pain. Does Dr. Stephanie recommend FODMAPs or low histamine diets?
Oh, that's great. So, yeah, I work with a lot of histamine intolerant patients, and that occurs from two things. So, one is if there has been a little bit, so mast cell, so leaky gut isn't what we thought it used to be. Research in the last few years has now shown that there's so many different layers besides just this one like area of gap junctions that control like whether or not like we're dealing with leaky gut. There's many different layers now, about 5 different layers, and the bottommost layer is this area now where like our mast cells are. It's our immune system, our gut associated lymphoid tissue, and also known as our gulp. But that's where a lot of our mast cells are located. And if our gut has sadly gotten to the point where those different layers, by the way, just so you know, I'm going to preface this with, you can absolutely rebuild your gut and get back to beautiful gut health. I did, a lot of my patients do. So many people do. But if you've gotten to that point now where the immune system has become affected, those mast cells that release histamine, that's their job. They release histamine. They're part of our immune system. That makes it easy to become intolerant to specific foods that are higher in histamine. And even when we are digesting foods, a natural histamine is getting released through that process. So that's another piece too. If you are starting to become a little histamine intolerant, by just the act of actually digesting foods can sometimes create a little bit of an issue too. So that's one piece, is that leaky gut piece. The other piece is actually dealing with mast cell activation syndrome, which can result in like that chest tightness, like different types of symptoms throughout the body. but histamine tolerant can have that as well. But mast cell is, again, when your body's mast cells, which release histamine, have now become overstimulated, making your body sensitive to a variety of things, including food. So it's common to develop those food allergies or a lot of food intolerances. I would say that decreasing FODMAPs has been shown to be beneficial for some, but a lower histamine diet seems to be one of the best ones for that. And again, it's make sure to work with somebody though on that, because you don't want to, be on a restricted diet for an extreme amount of time, because that can in and of itself can start to develop a little food intolerances too. But a lower histamine diet, definitely. So looking to foods that have been aged, even foods like spinach and strawberries, chocolate, those are high in histamine too. So just looking to those different foods and just trying to reduce those is can be very, very helpful in terms of the histamine intolerance. And other foods too, I'll just mention them really quickly, that can affect patients with mast cell is foods that are high in salicylates, lectins actually can trigger mast cell. They're not bad for, none of these foods are bad for you. They can just trigger you if you're dealing with that underlying issue. And oxalates, foods that are high in oxalates can also trigger too. So I always recommend keep a food diary for a week and just kind of identify when you're noticing your symptoms. And then I would look up what foods those are highest in, potentially histamine, maybe oxalates, and seeing if what you're responding to can be a big key indicator of what's going on.
Very nice. That was very informative. Thank you so much. I hope Music Monster Man, I hope that helps you out. I'm sure it does. And if you need to set up an appointment with Dr. Stephanie, I'm sure, she could help you out with that. So, all right. Let's see. I'm actually not seeing any questions. I hope I didn't miss any, but I think that was the last one that I can see right now. So we are at the 90-minute mark. So I think we'll cut it off there. And so one last one. Music Monster Man says, does Dr. Stephanie work one-on-one with clients online? She is fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I do. I work with patients all over online as a consultant. So yes.
Very
I'm only
nice.
virtual actually. So I don't actually, this is my office, my home.
That's the
So,
way to do it. That's
yeah.
definitely a good way to go.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, that was very hold on, let's see here. By the way, I have Dr. B's Fiber Fuel Cookbook that has an extensive chapter on histamine, so I have a list of foods to avoid as well. There you go.
Great.
All right. Okay, cool. So let's do the drawing here. Thank you again, everybody, for asking such great questions and again for being here with us. So for the cinch bag, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to keep it to within the U.S. only. So as we do anytime we have a physical gift. Sorry to the international guests. We still appreciate you, but I just I'm gonna keep it to U.S. People only for that. But if you are international and you get selected, you can still get the ebooks. So we'll just do it that way. All right, and just try if you hear your name called and you're international, if you could please just quickly put it in the chat so that we know, that would be awesome. Or you can email me again. Matt@myrawintuition.com is where to send your email if you win, and then I'll get you all that good stuff that we're giving away. All right, so again, for next season of the show, I'm gonna try and find a more official way of selecting people. But as you know, I just scroll my mouse through the chat, and wherever it lands, if it lands on somebody asking a question, that person wins the drawing. So here we go. Scrolling back and forth, and we're gonna stop there. Ah, music Monster Man. You see,
Oh,
and this is the benefit of asking multiple questions is there's a better chance for my mouse to land on your name. So Music Monster Man, I believe you're in the US. So if that's true, you'll get the cinch bag as well. All right, let's see here. The second person is Tessa. Wow, Tessa is like, I swear she's like won so many of these. So congratulations, Tessa, and congratulations, Music Monster Man. You guys both won the ebooks and the cinch bags. Tessa, I know you're in Boston, so you're in the U.S., so that worked out perfectly. And yeah, so just email me, both of you, at matt@myrawintuition.com, and I'll get you all set up with all that. I'll just need I'll need to know where to send the cinch bags, and I hope you enjoy those. But that concludes this 17th episode of the Raw Intuition Health Show. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Stephanie, for the wealth of information and just the way that you are able to communicate some of this information in such an easy to understand way. Very appreciative of everything you do. So thanks again for being here.
Oh, thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me. And honestly, I really mean it when I say like I'm so excited I was on your like final episode to kick off like how exciting. Like this is like what a great thing that you're doing for everybody, like bringing different guests on and talking about such important topics. Like it's wonderful. So thank you for having this platform to have people to come on and talk about such important things that people can do to elevate their healthy lifestyles. So
Yeah.
thank you for having me and thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you. It was is an absolute honor, and I appreciate the kind words. So yeah, thank you everybody else for again being here, being so awesome, showing up every week and asking great questions. I hope the show this year has benefited you in some way, and next year we're gonna have another great lineup. Hopefully, we'll get Dr. Stephanie back on for another show. And yeah, so thanks again, everybody. We will see you in the new year in 2024. I'll be sure to keep you all posted when the next show is gonna, the first show in 2024 is going to air. But again, it's gonna be same time, same place, Sundays at 11 Central, 12 Eastern, and we'll see you there. So thanks again, and always follow your raw intuition.